Yes,
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 yes. So,
yes.
welcome back to yet another episode of the Purple Rain podcast. This is going to be episode 326 of PRP. I want to appreciate and thank every last one of you guys for coming out to this episode of the show. As you guys can see, I have two very, very special guests to my left and my right on this episode. Listen, man, I gave you guys full disclosure yesterday when I went live. I said today's episode is going to be big, it's going to be special. Now, I do want to start off by saying my co-host Alex is not here. He's actually going out of town this week, so he is okay. He'll be back. Definitely rooting for safe traveling mercies for him. He should be back on next week's episodes. But I've got two very special guests here. I'm going to introduce them one at a time. To my left over here on this side, I've got Cordell Woodland from 105.7 The Fan, man. And he's been going crazy all over Twitter covering the team recently. You guys, I'm sure you guys are very, very familiar with his post-training camp reaction videos where he kind of spends like 4 or 5, 6 minutes breaking down everything that happened, man. He's out there sweating. He's out there in the heat. You know what I mean? He's out there in the rain. It's about the thunderstorm, man. So big, big shout out to him. Cordell, how you doing, man?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're gonna have some fun tonight. And then over here on my right, we've got a returning visitor. This guy is Kevin Ostreicher from Locked On Ravens, man. As you guys know, we had a blast last time we had him on. He got a lot of good insight, for us. So hopefully we got some good insight today. I know we do, man. Or else I wouldn't get these guys, man. I always get the best. I only get the best. You know what I mean? So shout out to you, Kevin. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good, man. I appreciate you having me back. I'm excited. It's a couple days away from preseason football, though. I just knowing me, that we're gonna get to the end of that second quarter. I'm gonna be like, all right, when's the regular season? I'm done with this. We need to get to week 1, but it's always exciting. Stadium practice was yesterday. I know we're gonna get into that, but joint practices tomorrow. I guess we're gonna see how many fights there are. Patrick Ricard, I know, talked to you, Cordell, and others that were at Owings Mills about that. So maybe we'll get some fists. I don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, man. It's looking like this joint practice that's coming up is gonna be debatably more important than the actual preseason game, because we know the Ravens ones are not going to be playing on Thursday night against the Colts. So the only time you're going to see like live action between the Ravens first team and another team's first team is going to be tomorrow at this practice. So I'm jealous personally of everybody who gets to actually go and attend that and watch it. But I want to start off just actually, first of all, we've already got over 100 people watching live right now. Thank y'all so much for coming out to this episode 326 of the Purple Rain podcast live. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel as well if you are on YouTube, and make sure you follow these fellas on their respective social media platforms. Their @ names should be linked in both of the titles, whether you're watching on Twitter, whether you're watching on YouTube or Instagram. So again, I want to appreciate each and every one of you guys for coming through. I see the Rain Gang is live in the house right now. We got Manuel's COD channel in here. We got Jing in the house, the Chef 87, D-Wiz is in the house, Chris is in the house, Tim Hughes is here too. Man, it's going to be a good show. It's going to be a good show. But yeah, I want to start off with some training camp talk. Let's not mince any more words. Let's just get right into it. Let's go ahead and transition over to our training camp scene here, where, as you guys can see, we do have the clips from the stadium practice yesterday. No clips from today's practice. So again, like I told Cordell, I'm going to be leaning on him heavy to let us know what happened. But man, we got a lot to talk about. I want to start with this though, and I'm going to go to Cordell first, and I'm going to go to Kevin, and we'll just kind of bounce off each other. Cordell, especially with you being at the castle, up close and personal, talking to some of the players, seeing everything that happens and taking note of it all, right? What are you most optimistic about as of right now today about the Ravens coming out of training camp, or currently being in training camp? And then to follow that up, what is your biggest concern about the Ravens currently in training camp right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now it's hard not to put a lot of stock into the defense. I mean, on paper, they have all the talent. You can go to all 3 levels and you'll find at least one household name. But watching it up close and seeing them to this point, not just in training camp, but also mini camp and stuff like that, this defense so far looks the part. They definitely get after the quarterback. They've been pretty good in the run game, and every now and then you'll see a couple of runs pop off, but not very often. And they've been getting their hands on the ball, and that's the thing that really gives me a lot of optimism about this defense looking the part this year, is that they've talked a lot about the turnovers being a big focal point for them. And so far, when you watch these practices, that looks to be the case. Even if they're not picking a pass off, guys are trying to make a play on the ball. And so I feel better about that. I'm curious to see if the situational pass rush will kind of be able to go hand in hand with that. And Mike Green, I think, will play a large part of that. What gives me some pause right now, it's got to be the penalties. I mean, and it's something I've tried to like overlook, right? It's because outside of last year, it's not like the Ravens have been this heavily penalized team over the years, but last year went the way that it did. And so far in camp, what concerns me is not just the false starts. You get your holdings every now and then, but it's also some mental ones like illegal man downfield, illegal formation, which has been the one that if I put it in my video today, like that's the one that's kind of blowing me away because how do you not just check that? You know, a lot of that is on receivers and the referee is right there. There's literally what's happening, but I saw it happen at least once today where you get into a routine of just kind of casually checking, but you're not checking. And the ref might be saying, no, you're not good. And sometimes they'll yell it and try to let you know. Sometimes they'll just let it go and let you snap the ball and throw the flag right away. So the penalties have definitely been the biggest concern for me right now in terms of what I've seen on a regular basis.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that makes a whole lot of sense, man. I mean, you talk about the penalties and some of them being like purely mental. Those are the things that will drive you absolutely mad when regular season comes around, right? And I do know that there's probably going to be some growing pains and some early season struggles, just like with a lot of other teams as well as they try to get back into the swing of things. But this is a team that has very, very high expectations. So I personally love Todd Monken, like going crazy and going bananas on the sidelines, which is something that I'm sure you've seen probably firsthand, Cordell, out there on the field. Like, I love that because these are things that have to be cleaned up. It's all about the little things at this point for the Ravens, you know? So these little things like, you know, these penalties, pre-snap penalties and things like that, and sometimes even the post-snap penalties that are purely mental, right? They have to be fixed and they have to be fixed fast. Real quick, over 700 people watching live already on this episode of the Purple Rain podcast. Shout out to everybody watching on YouTube. Shout out to everybody watching on X and Instagram as well. I want to throw it over to Kevin now. Kevin, I'm sure, well, I know for a fact you've been following Ravens training camp just as much as we have as well. So what is your biggest concern coming out of training camp right now? And what are you most optimistic about too?
Yeah, I mean, I think the penalties, I think Cordell hit it on the head there, where last season they were the second most penalized team in the league. And it just felt like it was momentum killing penalties that they'd run a ball on first down with Derrick Henry. They'd pick up 9 yards, it'd be 2nd and 1, but all of a sudden, nope, there's a holding penalty. All of a sudden it's 1st and 20, and it just ends up ruining your drive and giving momentum back to the other team. And then I think like week 1 was a little bit of an anomaly for them because that was like Ronnie Stanley getting penalized every 3 plays for being too far lined up in the backfield. And then we never really heard about that again. But it was little things, you know, little things defensively, offensively. In training camp, with everything with training camp, I never want to put too much stock one way or the other into it. But if it becomes a trend, then you have to start opening your eyes. Like if it was just 1 or 2 days where it's like, oh, okay, that was a pretty rough day penalty wise, but then things get cleaned up a little bit, you're like, okay. But then if it just continues to be a trend like we're hearing and seeing, you start to worry a little bit more. You know, the first, what was it, 11-on-11 in stadium training camp practice was a false start on Roger Rosengarten. So you're like, of course, this is how it kicks off here. But I'm hopeful, at least, if there's a silver lining you can take out of it, it's that it is in training camp. It's when the games don't count. I'd rather the Ravens get this all out of their system now, work on it, correct it before the games start counting. And the Ravens made a move, I believe it was last week or maybe a couple weeks ago. I think it was last week. They hired a former NFL referee in Tony Michalek to come in and help them. And the Bills actually did the same thing last year with John Perry, and they saw a small bump in terms of their rankings in penalties. I believe it might have been like they were the 3rd highest penalized team to the 7th highest. So it wasn't like that huge bump, but still like every yard counts. And a penalty, I kind of described it like this over the past couple of days. If you're on like a 3rd and 9 as a defense and you think you force a 3 and out, and all of a sudden there's a pass interference, gives the offense an automatic first down, and that drive ends up extending all the way 12, 13 plays, 9-minute drive. a penalty can be the difference between your defense being absolutely gassed. It could be the difference. Maybe somebody gets injured on a play because a guy, like, there are
Mm,
so many little nuances like that spiral out of a penalty. And
that's a
so
good point. Yeah.
I agree where it's like, in the grand scheme of things, 5 yards might not mean a lot, or 10 yards might not mean a lot, but if it adds up like it did for the Ravens last year, it could be a problem. And then I think most optimistic, just the depth. I mean, the depth all around. You look at this roster up and down. One position I think that is really impressing me, at least from what I've been hearing, is the wide receivers. But obviously Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman, they've missed some time. But this depth is ridiculous that the Ravens have. It's like Dayton Way's making plays, Keith Kirkwood's making plays, Anthony Miller's involved. You have Malik Cunningham showing up. Like, there's a lot of guys. And I think everybody assumes DeJounte Wester, if they keep 6, is going to have that 6 wide receiver job locked up. And I think that right now that's still probably the case. But they're going to have some tough decisions to make there. They got lucky with Dayton Wade last year that he ended up being able to get snuck on their practice squad. If he has another good preseason, I'm not sure they get so lucky this year. So they have some decisions to make in that wide receiver room. But yeah, depth up and down the roster. It's incredible when you look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. And you made a fabulous point about the penalties, man, and how they can literally like spiral from, just being maybe a 5-yard or a 10-yard, simple penalty to your defense being gassed, and all of a sudden now you can't stop the run, and now that is your Achilles heel in the game. Things like that, just don't bode well for the success of a team. Before we move on, we do have our first super chat donation of the episode. This one's coming from the Flock Rundown, another friend of the show, dropping the 10-piece in the chat. Thank you so much, the Flock Rundown. That's our guy over there. Make sure you guys go subscribe to his channel as well. He's also putting out daily Ravens content, doing a fabulous job of it as well. Says incredible content and info coming from all 3 of you guys. Keep killing it. Go Ravens. That's right, man. That's right, man. Appreciate you so much for the super chat donation. But okay, let's go ahead and shift gears here to some more specifics about training camp. And I want to start here. I want to start with special teams. Special teams is something that has been talked about a lot across the Ravens community, especially over this offseason with, the departure of Justin Tucker and now Tyler Loop coming into the fold, being the first kicker that the Ravens have actually drafted and draft capital on. Cordell, again, I'm going to come to you first on this. What have you seen thus far? Because the reports coming out is that, and from all the videos that we see, Tyler Loop is the real deal. You know what I mean? He's got the swagger, he's got the confidence, he's got the big leg, he's got he's even got the fan base coining Loop, there it is. You know what I mean? Like, already, like, it's just so soon. So I want to know, when you watch him up close and personal, Cordell, like, what are you seeing from Tyler Loop? How much confidence do you have in Tyler Loop to kind of carry the special teams unit and have it be as consistent as it's been in past years?
Well, I do think, right now he's in a good stretch. Coming off the M&T practice day where he went 11 for 11, I believe. Had a couple of really good days in practice leading up to that as well. And then you see the team move on from John Hoyland, and it kind of just rolls out the red carpet a little bit for Tyler Loop. But I think the question has never been about his leg. They know he has a boot. That's been evident. And the other part is they love that his process repeats itself. And I remember talking to one of the scouts about him, and that was one of the things that they felt like that made them comfortable with him, is the fact that even if he does kind of get into a rut and he misses a couple of kicks, it's always about being able to revert back to your foundation, kind of like golf a little bit. You lose your swing, you still have the core part of your mechanics. And that's a golf reference because I've been dibbling and dabbling in the golf world, over the last few months.
Okay.
So I'm getting a little more well-versed in that. But yeah, it's similar. It's similar to that. So I think that is what they like about Tyler Loop, is that he has a process that he is able to repeat even when he's not kicking the ball well. You combine that with him having a strong leg, and a confident guy, like you mentioned, you should get more success than not out of a kicker. So I was surprised to see the move on from John Hoyland without him at least getting one preseason game. And John will say things that at times you kind of got to take with a grain of salt, but I did believe him when we talked to him the other day about John Hoyland, and he made it seem like it wasn't something that they had planned. You know, it just happened because of certain camp injuries popping up and them signing a guy or two and then having to let other guys go. You got to make room. They're already having to play with these roster numbers already, and they're not even to cut day yet. So that kind of tells you how tough it's going to be when you do get to that point and they have to try to finalize this 53 man. But yeah, I think right now Tyler Loop is in a groove, and his first real test will be Thursday night.
Yeah, absolutely right about that. I mean, what did he hit yesterday at the stadium practice? Like a 60-yarder or something
Yeah,
like that?
he had a 60
Crazy. Yeah.
yarder, had a 56 yarder. He also had a
Yep.
58 yarder a couple of weeks ago. So they've been showcasing his leg. And that he, to his credit, I mean, he did miss, I believe, off my recollection, I have to look at my notes, but I know he missed at least one 50 yarder in practice to this point in camp. I want to say it's a possibility, maybe missed a second 50 plus yarder at the beginning, but definitely one that I can remember. But for the most part, he has hit his long distance kicks.
Okay. Okay. Kevin, what are your realistic expectations for Tyler Loop going into this season?
Yeah, I mean, I expect him to have some rookie ups and downs. You know, I think it's not fair of him to expect him to be perfect because, you know, nobody is. And
Sure.
I think for me, there are all the storylines to hear. Well, the last time the Ravens had a rookie kicker, they won the Super Bowl. That was Justin Tucker. So, of course, you know, everybody's been talking about that, but everybody looks at the rookie aspect of it and are saying, man, well, can the Ravens live with those inconsistencies? Can they survive with if Loop has some of those bad days? And I kind of look back at last season and I'm like, well, it has to be better than Justin Tucker last year for like almost the entirety of the year. I mean, it's not like the Ravens had perfect kicker play last season. So I would expect the Ravens to deal with Tyler Loop and some of those ups and downs. You know, I wouldn't expect them to be too hasty in terms of moving on from him. There are some vets available like a Nick Folk, Matt Prater, but you know, I don't really expect them to go down that route. It really feels like they're invested. It'd probably take a lot for them to say, hey, we don't really see this as a fit anymore. But as Cordell said, you know, the leg is clearly there. It's about consistency. You know, the crowd was getting into it yesterday, and some of those, it's not real. It's not a real game situation, but you know, kind of simulating some of that noise that could be going on at M&T Bank Stadium, because there's a difference between hitting a 60-yarder, you know, at a stadium practice and hitting it at Acrisure Stadium with 2 seconds to go, down 2 to win the game. So, like, of course,
Yeah.
you can't measure a guy's heart in those moments professionally until he actually gets in those moments professionally. But he did it at Arizona well. He's someone that I think has a bright future in the league. But I know for a lot of these younger players, and that's why I think the Ravens have drafted these guys, especially in recent years, that are more NFL ready than projects, because that's what they need right now. It's NFL ready talent. They can help them win Super Bowls in this window. So I think Loop is ready. Doesn't mean he'll make every single kick this season. But again, I just kind of go back to last season at the kicker position was a whirlwind. And even if it is that, the Ravens still ended up rattling off wins late in the season and gave themselves a shot to get to a Super Bowl despite how the year ended.
Yeah, and just kind of like piggybacking off of that and like talking about his confidence, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't he the one who was like encouraging the crowd to get loud yesterday to like give himself a distraction? Like it didn't happen like, you know what I mean, like all organically, like just with the crowd on its own. Like he called it on. Like that speaks to his confidence in a way that, you know, it puts me at ease, you know, as a fan, knowing that you have a guy who's not shy, who's not timid, who doesn't seemingly shrink in the biggest moments, things like that. And apparently he was the same way at Arizona. You know, walked around with, you know, what some people call him with the cojones of steel. You know what I mean? And that's what you need from your kicker, man.
Yeah,
especially when
there was a story on the broadcast, and I forget who told it, so I apologize. But apparently, when Tyler Loop was a kid, you know, when he was jumping off the diving board at the pool, you know, he would want everybody at the pool to look at him do cool tricks and get all the eyes on him and all that. So apparently, he wants the attention. Like that's something that he wants.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I love it. I love it, man. So let's go ahead and shift gears here. I see a couple people in the chat, over 1,400 people live here. A lot of us watching on Twitter. Shout out to you guys. But I want to talk about what some of the chat has brought up. Offensive line. And again, we'll start with Cordell. Throw it over to you, Kevin. Cordell, what is your current assessment on the offensive line for the Ravens right now? I know a lot of people are kind of talking about, you know, that left guard, center guard combo. Obviously, we know Tyler Linderbaum is a lock. Obviously we know Daniel Falele has the job and it's his to lose, and apparently so does Andrew Voorhees. But what are you seeing from the offensive line, and do you have any concerns there?
Uh, well, I don't want to keep harping on the penalties. That's an evident one. Let's
Yeah,
just
for
say
sure,
that.
for sure.
Other than that, I think as a unit, they'll be fine. When you have a Derrick Henry in your backfield and Lamar in your backfield, by default, you're going to probably be at no less than an average O line in the NFL. I think they have the capabilities to be better than that when you combine that with their talent level on with the guys across the board. Falele, I think when he's got the stamina, he's fine. He's fine in the sense of his body will bail him out at times. The problem is when he starts to get tired and then he starts to get lazy, and now you got him leaning and trying to basically fall on you, or he's not shooting out of his stance because he's a guy, it's going to be tough for him to recover. That's why he struggles with speed so much. If you're going straight at him, he can do something with that because of his strength. And that's with him not even having a consistent, strong base at times. Again, his mechanics get very lazy when fatigue starts to settle in. And that's my issue with him is what happens if the Ravens have a vintage 10 to 12 play drive in September, week 2 against the Browns at home. It's still hot, and um, we've seen them rotate guys in on the offensive line at times. They don't have the depth to do that this year. They don't have the guys that they can just bring in
Yep.
off the bench to go out there and get snaps with the first team. So that's really my biggest concern with Falele is, can he get his stamina right? Even once it doesn't get hot, it's still tough out there. You're still trying to move grown men around. So it's not easy. So I really think he's still a mixed bag. He's not a guy that is going to win every rep. And you still might get some bloopers out there, you know what I'm saying, on some of his bad reps. That might still happen. I've seen it happen in practice. But he will give you some good ones. And the Ravens have been patient with him. I think they see the potential with him. And I do think he has potential. He's just a guy that you kind of just got to keep pouring into a little bit. But other than that, I think they'll be fine. The left guard battle is, John said it the other day, is basically Voorhees' job to lose at this point. I don't think he's been out of this world good, but I think he's been good enough. And Ben Cleveland he's not necessarily a practice guy. And I think they realize he may put together better game film than his practice film, but that's just not something that they want to rely on, and I don't think it's something that they feel like they have to, in the sense of they think Voorhees' ceiling is higher, and it's hard to argue that. So that's who they're going with right now until otherwise. I don't think it's a situation where Voorhees can't lose that job. He lost it last year. So if Ben Cleveland keeps doing what he's doing, because John did give him credit for being better as of late, just keep pushing him. Keep pushing him. But Rosengarten, he's had an up and down camp, but overall, I think he's been fine. Ronnie has been fine. Definitely. I think Ronnie's looked good outside of the penalties at times. Same for Linderbaum as well. So I think the offensive line will be fine. My concern with them is just the depth. They can't afford many guys to go down. They don't have much left after that starting five.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kevin, and it's kind of crazy how long of a leash the Ravens have afforded Daniel Falele, because he did start off very, very slow last year, picked it up as the season was ending, and then there was all this news coming out about how he lost like 15 pounds or something like that, and he's looking leaner than ever. But uh, I don't know if it's going to necessarily translate onto the field. I saw yesterday one of the clips. He was just getting absolutely just bulldozed by Travis Jones. Now, take that with a grain of salt, because Travis Jones is really, really good.
Right.
He's a mammoth of a man, and he's done that to a lot of guards in the NFL. But Kevin, where do you stand currently with this offensive line? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, it's a group that has talent on it. I think it is the guard spots that you're looking at, obviously, and You mentioned it for Falele. They kind of just wrote it out with him last season with all the ups and downs. And, you look at some of his week 1 and week 2 tape compared to where he was at the end of the season, you do see the improvement. But they did have a choice in that in terms of whether they wanted him to be out there. They could have moved McCary back over to the right side once Voorhees came back and then plugged Voorhees back in, but they clearly wanted to see what they had in Falele. But like Cordell said, McCary's gone. Josh Jones, who they liked as their swing guy, super six, the guy who they would put on the end, he's now gone too. So you look at it and, if it's not Falele or it's not Voorhees, do you trust an Emory Jones who hasn't even practiced yet? And, we don't even know he's going to come back. I mean, John Harbaugh, you talk about Cordell, kind of what his timelines can be. I'm not sure we see him for a while, if at all. So we're going to, what else do you have there? Would be Ben Cleveland. Like, that is your other option. And I think that Cleveland, with the practice stuff, it clearly has rubbed John Harbaugh the wrong way multiple different times, and he's been put in the doghouse. I was shocked he came back, but it felt like he didn't really have any other options after what happened in the offseason, and he didn't really have any film like that. So I think for now, you're just you got to go with what you have, and I think, like Cordell said, they'll be fine, especially because Lamar Jackson is the best in the league at making his offensive line look better than they sometimes are in games. So
yes,
you can evade sacks, and that's not an excuse. Like, put the best line you can out there. This is, I think, the best version of the line that they have on the roster. But, a year or two leap from Rosengarten would do a lot for them. Ronnie Stanley having another healthy year obviously would do a lot for them. And, we'll see what kind of happens with, not that it's going to affect his play. I don't expect it to. But, with Linderbaum, his extension, what's that going to look like? That number, it made sense for them to decline the 5th-year option because it would have reset the center market by like $5 million, which would be a crazy amount of money. But I'm curious to see kind of if they get that done before the season or not. Either way, I still expect Linderbaum to be good and that not affect his play whatsoever. He made that pretty clear when he was talking to the media out at Owings Mills. But I still think that with this group offensively, you look at the quarterback position, the running back position, the wide receivers, the tight ends, like all those positions look pretty set. It's the offensive line, especially the guards, that I think give people the most pause when it comes to offense.
Yeah, and you just mentioned the tight end group. Haven't talked about Isaiah Likely and how his injury will impact this Ravens team. Kevin, I want to start with you on this one. Obviously, Likely goes down last week, fracture in his foot. He's going to miss 6 to 8 weeks. How do you think this impacts the Ravens offense? And when do you think that realistically that we might see Mark Andrews again? Because I think, not Mark Andrews, but Isaiah Likely, I think it's probably going to be week 3 against Detroit.
Yeah.
But what say you?
That's where I am too. I think there's an outside chance he returns for week 1, but you don't want to mess with injuries like this and the healing time, recovery time. The Ravens have generally taken a cautious approach. And, I would hate to see them bring him back at like 85% in week 1. I mean, you got a long season ahead of you. If they lose the game to Buffalo in week 1 without Isaiah Likely and he's able to come back healthy and put together a really strong season, that's my preference. Like, don't risk his long-term availability and health. And plus, for Isaiah Likely himself, like, this is a contract year for the guy. He himself is probably like, hey, I want to really take my time here. Might miss a couple more weeks of production because of it and being out there on the field helping my team. But long-term, it makes the most sense for both the Ravens and Isaiah Likely, because this is kind of what I say about injuries like this and longer-term recovery times. An injured guy out there is not helping anybody. It's not helping the player. It's not helping the team. Like, if a guy clearly is not, an example of this was Travis Jones last season, where Travis Jones had the ankle injury. He came back and just clearly did not look like himself. He was a shell of what we know that he can be. And he was out there clearly still favoring it. And, it was rough to watch him out there. He wasn't making the impact that he usually did. And, eventually he was able to come back, but it wasn't the same there. So you really want to take your time with this kind of thing, especially like with foot injuries and lower leg things. It's difficult for me to envision him back for week 1. And then, I don't think the Ravens feel this way, but if they want to try to sneak out that Cleveland one without Isaiah Likely at home in the opener before playing Detroit on Monday night, I think that's probably where I'd target. You get that extra day of recovery leading into Monday night from a Sunday game. So I'm probably circling that week 3 game, get Likely in. And, it's tough. It's a loss for him, but obviously it is next man up. Charlie Kohler will step in. I don't know if they're going to keep 4 tight ends on the like if they're going to add an extra tight end to their final 53 man, they could easily just add a guy to the practice squad and call him up early in the season for game day practice squad elevations. But could mean more for Tez Walker, DeAndre Hopkins, more receiver sets. Like we'll see. And obviously it's dependent on game flow, but they're going to miss likely his athleticism, his versatility, the blocking's gotten a lot better. So, it's a tough break for him for sure.
Yeah, yeah, man. And Cordell, I want to throw this question down here to you from Manuel's COD channel. It says, after this year, so we're looking down the road a little bit, but after this year, do you think that the Ravens will rock out with Isaiah Likely and Charlie Kolar and get rid of Mark Andrews? What do you think is going to happen there?
I mean, yeah, that in my mind, that's the most likely outcome just by default. Likely's got the upside being younger than Mark. And I don't know if I'm curious to see what Mark gets compared to Likely. Mark will probably, in my mind, get more than him. Mark will still be under 30, and has been one of the best tight ends in football since he got in the league. So he would warrant a bigger deal. So I do, and the Kohler deal is easily the easier deal to do, I would imagine, out of those three. And look, they may go and get somebody else too. I think they like Kohler, obviously. I think they would try to keep him around for sure. But Likely to me is different, and Mark is his own. Like it goes Mark and Likely, and in my mind, it's a massive drop off to Kohler. And I think while Kohler obviously will play a little more than he was probably expected to. He already gets a decent amount of runtime anyway, but his role may expand, if anything, now with Likely down. And I don't think week one is the most likely outcome for Likely. I would be surprised if the Ravens rush him back out there. This is a team that understands the type of year that they could have, and not saying Likely's the most important piece to that, but he is one of the focal points, I think, offensively. So I don't think they're going to be in any rush to throw him back on the field by some week one deadline. I don't think that's realistic. But I don't think Kohler is going to give you what Likely gives you. He's not Likely. He's not.
No, he's not.
Watch these guys in practice and in the game since they've come into the league. Likely makes plays that Kohler can't make. It just is what it is. And I know people talk about the blocking and everything, and I know how important that is to this Ravens offense as well. But look, in this day and age, you want your tight ends to be able to make plays, and Likely's able to do that. And he's a good enough blocker to get the job done. I think he's a better blocker than he gets credit for, honestly. Go watch some of the Ravens' big run plays and see how many times Likely is the one putting somebody on their butt to open a hole that I don't think he gets credit for those. But yeah, I mean, Mark has been disrespected, and some of it he is warranted, some of the stuff that's said about him, but Mark is still a really good player in this league. Those types of guys aren't a dime a dozen. So I think they, in a perfect world, like to keep them all. But realistically, yeah, Likely and Kohler are probably the future tight ends, I would say.
Yeah, and you talked about Isaiah Likely. Like Isaiah Likely blocking, especially blocking in space, is something that, it's an underrated part of his game. And I think that the reason why he's so good at it is because, as we know, he was a former wide receiver, right? And he kind of still plays like that as well, especially with some of his moves. Like he's very elusive, kind of like a wide receiver would be. In terms of being in open space, he's so quick and agile that I think he gets up on guys and gets in their chests like faster than they expect. And he's also powerful too. So you see him running through guys, like you said, Cordell, putting guys on their butt, because he's so quick, and then he's also powerful too at the point of attack. Not to mention, I think that Isaiah Likely, I don't think it's as crazy to say, I think Isaiah Likely has the best hands on the team. Is that crazy to say, guys?
I mean, D-Hop's there now. That I gotta give it to D-Hop. But if we're going off of the guys that were already here, probably.
Yeah. I agree. I would say the same. I mean, D-Hop's just shown it for years, and we've seen the highlights, and it feels like in Cordell, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but it feels like D-Hop has like these spectacular catches, but almost every one is out of bounds. Like on these plays, he's like, you can't find
Or flag.
yeah, exactly. You know, the OPI on, was it Wiggins who he did the face mask on, like, you know, but that's what training camp's for, right? You find the field, and then hopefully in the regular season he makes those catches, but just a little more on the right side of the chalk.
Yeah, yeah. Real quick, I do want to mention this. I know that Cordell, you probably saw this firsthand at the stadium practice, but anybody see Derrick Henry beating Trenton Simpson on a little wheel route, you know,
Yep.
and catching the ball
Yep.
for what almost was a touchdown? Is there any concern when it comes to backing play this year? You know, Roquan Smith and Trenton Simpson obviously going to hold it down there. Of course, the Ravens drafted Teddy Buchanan. There's a couple other options as well, but what is your current assessment of the linebacking room, and like what do you want to see from the linebackers this season, Cordell?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I think what they have at linebacker is fine. Roquan is an all-pro still, and Roquan has looked good all camp. Honestly, so I'm fine with Roquan leading that charge. I think Trenton Simpson will be okay. I know a lot was made about him getting beat by Henry. First off, Henry is faster than people give him credit for. It's like they think he's some 86 speed running back in Madden, and he's out there beating Trenton Simpson. No, this dude is a strong guy, and he's got muscle on him, so he knows how to use that to be able to get an angle and turn it upfield. And I always say, anyway, I think people talking about linebackers and coverage is kind of overblown. How many linebackers in the NFL are truly coverage linebackers? Like Fred Warner, all right. But other than that, like I don't have a whole bunch that's popping in my head right now in terms of linebackers you want out there covering guys, especially the way these running backs are being fed on checkdowns nowadays, how good the tight end position has become in the slot game is as heavily used as ever before. So, I mean, it's a tough thing to do. So you're going to lose some, but I think linebackers will be fine. The Ravens will live in nickel and dime a lot this year. So you're going to see a bunch of times throughout the game where Roquan will probably be the only linebacker on the field anyway, and that's more than good enough.
Yeah. Kevin, your thoughts on the linebacking play?
Yeah, I 100% agree with Cordell, and especially in the league nowadays, like you do have dime packages, multiple DBs. So like with the Ravens in
Yeah.
particular, with Roquan and PQ, like those are two guys you wanted out there. Not that PQ was like this great coverage linebacker or anything, but they played so well off of each other that, you know, you didn't want to sacrifice not having either of those guys on the field when it counted because of their camaraderie and all the skill sets that they have. But now with PQ in Pittsburgh, you know, you're not married to the idea of having, you know, another inside linebacker next to Trenton or next to Roquan Smith, exclusively out there. So like you can bring guys down into the box, you know, you can have a single high safety and, you know, play guys up at the line. To me, I think that the linebacker spot in general, there's been a lot made about who's going to be that next guy. Like, I mean, it's Trenton Simpson. Teddy Buchanan obviously is someone who a lot of people have their eye on after he was a mid-round pick of the Ravens. But you also see these other undrafted guys that, you know, they're fighting for spots too. Chandler Martin is somebody that I know he's fighting for a spot. They have other guys as well. I mean, they lost a lot of that room. Malik Harrison, Chris Board, Christian Welch. There are opportunities. Jake Hummel, he, I think, is going to be more of a special teams player for them. He came over from the Rams, and, you know, he might see some snaps, but I would primarily expect him to be a special teams player. So, you know, the Ravens also apparently were flirting around with CJ Mosley a little bit. CJ reached out and we're trying to figure out what was going on there. It didn't end up working because he ended up retiring. Rick Ritter of CBS had that story. He talked with CJ and that whole situation. But, you know, it kind of piques my interest of like, what would that role have been for CJ and how do the Ravens feel? I mean, I can't remember what it was. It might've been the owners meetings or some early offseason press conference. John Harbaugh did not sound super confident in Trenton Simpson and his answers, but obviously he's now received a lot of good praise from Zach Orr, from some of his coaches during training camp. So it's a position that hopefully you're just not going to rely on a bunch. Like, I think that Trenton can be better for you than he was last season, and it clearly hurt Roquan with how much Roquan had to have on his plate. And that wasn't just inside linebacker. I mean, that was safeties messing up and the secondary being a mess. But I think this year with the linebackers, you just don't want to have it be a repeat of like week 1 against Kansas City. Kansas City just threw a receiver, Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy in the slot, and they like play after play. It was Malik Harrison, Roquan, like all these guys getting cooked. you hope for a little bit of better play than that. But I do think it's just going to come down to Roquan or bust in the postseason.
Yeah, for sure. Sticking on the defensive side of the football, I know a lot of people want to hear about pass rushers, right? What's going on with the pass rush? Like, who's like really popping, off the screen coming out of camp? So, Cordell, I want to throw this one to you. Who are you most excited to watch, up in this upcoming season from the pass rushers?
Yeah, I mean, well, you talk about pass rushing. That's kind of the job of all of the guys, especially on the front line. But they have some blitzers that they like to use as well. I think Matt Abike is going to be really good. I'm not saying that he's going to go out there and get 13 and a half sacks again or anything like that. But he's been a guy that's consistently won his one-on-one matchups in practice. And he has been kind of in a rhythm over the last few days of just batting the ball down at the line of scrimmage. So just in terms of generating pressure or making a quarterback's life tougher, I think Nnamdi Madubuike has been a dude that's definitely shown like he's going to be one of those game wreckers again this year. I think obviously Mike Green is going to be a big part of getting after the quarterback, and every time he's been in pads and has been able to somewhat kind of get let off the leash, he's made the most of those opportunities. It seems like every pads day, even if you go to the stadium practice, you're going to find at least one rep of him like giving you a little bit of like a wow factor, like, oh, like you're starting to envision what that looks like in a game. So I'm really excited for Thursday night to see him be able to finish these reps that he can't finish in practice, being able to show, because there are guys that beat their man. Jadeveon Clowney was always criticized for being the almost sack guy. How many almost sacks does Jadeveon Clowney have? So you want to be able to see him be able to complete that last step. And we saw him lead the nation in sacks, so we know he can do it, but it's a difference at this level, obviously. So Thursday night will be the big test for him. I think Owe, I'm hoping the best for Owe. Like, to build on that double-digit sack year last year, he comes in, you talk to him, he seems a lot more relaxed, a lot more, more like a vet right now. Like, he gets it. The game is slowed down for him. He's clearly hit the weight room, and I think that'll work out for him in a big way. That combined with Van Noy, at some point, Van Noy's numbers have got to go down. And if there's any year for it to happen, I think it'd be this year, because the Ravens do have more guys that you expect to be a part of that pass rush unit. Travis Jones, obviously, as well. So what I'm saying is, I think the Ravens this year, they have a nice stable of guys that they can throw at you. I've always brought up the Eagles from that year they won the Super Bowl with Nick Foles. They had like two different pass rush units that they throw out there. I think the Ravens have enough depth right now that if they're able to stay healthy, they could throw some wave of guys at you. And I didn't even mention the nickel blitzers like Marlon, who excels at that, and Kyle Hamilton, who does a really good job at that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we're on a little bit of limited time here. I do want to ask you guys about one more particular player before we get to the very last question I have. Jaire Alexander. I know that he has been highly regarded as a guy who's bringing a lot of energy to the team. And me personally, I feel like that is absolutely necessary when you're talking about a team now who, this is what, the third year that the Ravens have been like legitimate like Super Bowl contender / favorites, but the past 2 years they fell short, they fell flat. And I think it would be very easy for this defensive unit to kind of come back in here and, feel like the years are kind of like stacking together with each other. Like, okay, just another long season that leads to another playoff loss, right? But when you insert a guy like Jaire Alexander, who just kind of refreshes the energy in the room, I feel like that does something for the defense's, chemistry. It does something for their moxie as a unit. It does something for just, again, their energy. So I love the fact that he's bonding with guys like Marlon Humphrey, going to the breakfast club, the lift club that they do early in the morning at 6 a.m. The fact that he's celebrating with Lamar Jackson after Lamar Jackson scores a touchdown. It just sounds like he's turning the entire team up. Kevin, I want to start with you on this one, and then I want to go over to Cordell. Kevin, what do you really think about Jaire Alexander on this roster, and what do you think we can expect from him?
Yeah, I mean, it just opens up so many possibilities. I mean, with Nate and Jair on the outside, Marlon obviously in the slot, that's a super team right there. Not to mention the guys that like bringing in Chidobe Awuzie. I mean, when they did that, I don't think they envisioned them getting Jair Alexander on a 1-year, $4 million deal, but it just adds to the riches they have at that position. And so last season, the second half of the year, the transformation, moving Kyle Hamilton back to the deep and bringing in Ardarius, like it became very hard to throw on them. Not to mention they were incredible for the full year against the run. And so when you're an opposing quarterback and opposing offense and you're looking for guys to throw at, last year that guy was Brandon Stevens. They didn't want to throw Marlon's way. They didn't want to throw Nate Wiggins' way by the end of the season. It really became, where is 21? We are going to find 21.
Pick on him.
And exactly, pick on Brandon Stevens. Now, Brandon Stevens is in New York, and you replace him with Jair Alexander. To me, this is upgrades across the board, not only cornerback-wise, but you know, you go across the board. I mentioned Awuzie. Obviously, Malachi Starks coming in for the combination of Marcus Williams and Eddie Jackson out there. It just feels like it's players that fit the system. Jair is somebody that, you know, obviously you have to watch the health situation with him. When he's on the field, in my opinion, he still is a top 10 cornerback. He still has that. Even on the play where Lamar and Keith Kirkwood they had that deep pass, Jair was still there. Like it was good coverage, just a better throw by Lamar to drop it in the bucket. And he's had a couple of those, and you saw that with the Henry play as well over Trenton Simpson. But he brings, like, energy is contagious. You know, you see the Ravens wired of Marlon just screaming his head off and like getting his guys pumped up. Like, and I think it was funny the answer he gave. It might have been the first time that he talked, where he said, like, man, essentially he said, I thought I was weird. But Marlon is like, it's a different, like they have found each other. And I'm just going to say it here. I know some people who are watching right now and are in the chat also watch me, so they know they're going to get mad at me. So I apologize. But the nickname that I've come up for Jair and Marlo is J-Lo. You got the J for Jair and the Lo from Marlon.
I like that.
Everybody hates it, but I appreciate that you like it. I appreciate I've gotten tomatoes thrown at me, but it's like those two and their energy, it is contagious, and it rubs off on everybody, and that can hype you up in a moment. Like maybe you're having a bit of a rough game against the team that, you know, you're supposed to be beating up on, and Jair can come over there and just his energy, it gets you fired back up, it gets you back in the game. So, and you know, I will say one more thing. Someone commented on that and said that they are Jenny from the Flock. So it's right there, guys. It's right there. It's right there.
It is, man. Love the energy coming from the team and just kind of everybody. You know, this preseason energy, man, it just feels good. I'm so glad football is back, guys. I just want to put that out there. I'm so glad football is back. Okay, let's go ahead, and I want to give you guys the last question here because I know we got to get out of here soon. There was a tweet put out by Warren Sharp from Sharp Analytics, right, where he brings up the fact, a very surprising stat, that the Ravens have struggled to win one-score games, right? It says that the Ravens are 23-24, which is a 48.9% clip, 18th in the NFL at winning one-score games. For reference, Kansas City wins 75% of one-score games. Pittsburgh wins 70.8% of their one-score games, and the reigning champion Philadelphia Eagles win 64.8% of their one-score games. So the question that I have for you guys is, we just got done talking about, you know, how deep the Ravens team is. They just released the depth chart, our unofficial depth chart, earlier today. And we know that on paper, this Ravens team should be seeing themselves playing football in February, right? However, that has not been the case the past couple of seasons. And this stat here kind of alludes to the point that the Ravens might be a little bit of front runners, right? And then they fold in the biggest moments when the going really gets tough, i.e. the playoffs. So I want to ask you guys, and Cordell, I want to start with you. Like, is there anything left, tangible or intangible, okay, whether it be tangible or intangible, that the Ravens really need? Is it a mentality switch? Is it a coaching thing? Is it a personnel thing in certain spots? What do you think it is that the Ravens need to kind of get over this hump of like not being able to consistently win or find ways to win these one games, which is what you got to do in the playoffs, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, first off, I think it's incredibly tough to win in the playoffs. That's why it's the playoffs. You have all the best teams in the league in this now tournament, in this winner go home format, and somebody's got to go home. And I think people underestimate how tough it is to win in this league, to win a Super Bowl in this league. Buffalo Bills went to 4 straight Super Bowls and lost them all. I mean, nothing is promised. Just because you have a great team doesn't mean you're going to win it all. That's just the reality of it. And that's what is hard to come to grips with. I also think, with the Ravens, turnovers is the low-hanging fruit. They don't generate enough turnovers, and they commit too many. And in the playoffs, 1 to 2 turnovers is a death sentence. You can't do it. You just can't. You have to be able to protect the ball. You go to that Joe Flacco Super Bowl run. What's the most incredible part about it? No turnovers from your quarterback. So that's a big part of it. But also, I think what kind of goes along with that is, and I learned this in the AFC Championship game when the Ravens lost to the Chiefs, they have to learn to be boring at times. The Ravens' only way to win isn't by Lamar being LaMarvelous and him being Superman, because you watch the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes has learned how to be a boring quarterback at times. He's learned how to throw the ball away on third downs and take a punt. He's learned how to, take the check down and not get the big play over the middle. He's learned how to eat a fumbled snap and not try to pick it up and make something crazy out of it sometimes. And some of that stuff works in the regular season, but that's comes with learning this isn't a regular season game. I have to be as close to perfect as I can at this time of the year. And I think that's a little bit of what the Ravens, I hope, have learned over this stretch of losing in the postseason is sometimes less is more, because they've lost to teams that haven't necessarily gone out there and put up all these SportsCenter top 10 highlights. They just didn't help the Ravens out. And that at times when you're playing the competition, you're playing in the postseason, that can be enough to win.
Yeah, absolutely. Kevin, what are your thoughts? I agree. I'm pretty much in lockstep with what Cordell just said, but what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and kind of piggybacking off of that, Josh Allen threw for 127 yards in that divisional round game. It's not like he threw for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns and was just, dicing up the Ravens. It was the Ravens defense got in a hole early, which is another problem in itself. I think the Ravens, in that Chiefs game, it was 7-0, 7-7, 14-7. You're like, I'm sure the Ravens are like, all right, this is about to be some 35-32 shootout. We're going to have to adjust. And instead of being boring and playing their game, like Cordell said, and just doing the stuff that can win you a game, they got in their own head. And that Ravens defense gave up no points in the second half of that 2023 AFC Championship game. They got really good in the second half of that Bills game as well. They have to start faster defensively. And, the turnover stat that I always read out is the Ravens in the 6 Lamar Jackson era playoff losses, they have just 2 defensive turnovers forced compared to 15 offensive turnovers. So it's a -13 turnover differential for the Ravens in those playoff losses. And like Cordell said, even 1 turnover can signal a complete flip of a game from where it was to where it ends up. So I think, to me, obviously the pressure is on the Ravens in the playoffs. It doesn't mean that if they have a really good regular season that we should just discount it. Like, I think, enjoy the regular season as it is. The Ravens are probably going to be good if everything goes right for them. Again, in fact, they should be. But those questions are going to just keep on coming throughout the year. And that is essentially what they have earned with these playoff losses. It is, all right, they're a great regular season team. Can they win in the postseason? Can they do it? And I know it's all going to be about Lamar Jackson, and especially in the national media, like that's all everybody talks about, Lamar this, Lamar that. I think the media pressure is on Lamar Jackson. I think the real pressure is on John Harbaugh this season. I think it's the case. And I know, I think, what was it, on the lounge, John talked about, and or it might have been another show, but John was, essentially got a little heated when he was asked about like Super Bowl and like, what does that mean? And the expectations. If the Ravens lose in the wild card round or divisional round again, where do you go? Like, something would have to change. It's not going to be Lamar Jackson. They have a inexperienced defensive coordinator in his second season. You're going to fire him. Todd Monken is a third-year offense. What, they're going to fire the special teams coach? Like, I don't know what their next step is. I think John Harbaugh, it's not that John isn't a good coach. I think he is. I think 25 teams will line up out the door to get John in the door. But sometimes it is just time. and a fresh start is needed. We saw it with Greg Roman. Greg was probably the perfect offensive coordinator for Lamar Jackson in his second season to get the best out of him in that offense. But there was a cap on what Greg Roman could do for the Ravens, and they moved on. Todd Monken has unlocked another level. I'm not saying John can't win a Super Bowl this season. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying if it does happen, that's where the pressure would shift to me. There'd be the conversations about Lamar, of course, and we'd have to see how the games would turn out. But to me, I feel like there are a lot of conversations about what the roster could look like after this upcoming year because of the fact that they have a lot of free agents coming up, extensions that are going to happen. I'd be curious about what happened to John Harbaugh in that situation too.
Interesting. It's a very hot take coming from our guy Kevin Ostreicher of the Locked On Ravens podcast. Real quick, just before we close, Cordell, do you have anything to rebuttal that with? I mean, with the whole John Harbaugh, he hates the Super Bowl or bust. Like, you got anything on that?
I mean, I kind of agree with Kevin. Where else do you go? I mean, of course, John is going to try to, wave at the flames and try to get it to go away. He doesn't want all of those public expectations on it, even though he does want it, but he can't talk about it. He can't acknowledge it. Because then you start to have the conversations we're having right now of what happens if you don't reach it, whose head ends up on the shelf. And it's like, John knows, just logically looking at the situation, like Kevin said, Lamar's not going anywhere. But you're going to fire your young defensive coordinator. He's not the reason. You're going to fire Todd Monken, who might be the best offensive coordinator in football. That's not the answer. So, yeah, I mean, it's only but so many bites of the apple that you get. And John has had a fair share amount of chances, I would say. Lamar's going to, what is this, his 8th, 9th year right now? I mean, come on, you're only going to get but so long.
Yeah, we're really getting down to the bottom of stuff here. But unfortunately, we do have to leave it there for this episode of the show. Real quick, I want to thank each one of these wonderful gentlemen here for coming out to this episode and giving us their insight, giving us their takes. They've been awesome. Hopefully, as season progresses, I can have both of them back on the show again. I would love that. I'm sure the Rain Gang would love that too, as long as they're down for it. You guys down for that, coming back on the show sometime in the season?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
All right. Sounds good. But yeah, guys, make sure you like this video. You also subscribe to the channel. And make sure you follow these guys on Twitter and Instagram as well, or wherever you can find them. You're actually going to see their @ names in the description and on the titles as well. So you can make sure you find them and follow them everywhere. But yeah, one more thing. We still got over 2,100 people watching live right now. Shout out to each and every one of you guys. Football season is back. Tomorrow is a very, very big day as the Ravens will have their joint practice with the Colts and then followed by the preseason game on Thursday. So, of course, there'll be a lot more Ravens content where this came from. But until next time, like my guy Alex always says, stay positive, test negative, and never, ever, ever forget, even on the rainiest of days, to call God. It's been episode 326 of the Purple Rain podcast. We're going to catch you guys in the next one. Peace.